Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith. I'm walking home from the University of Ottawa. Basically, we have a big snowstorm going on. I think we've had close to 30 centimeters of snow already. We're getting these tremendous swings in temperature. So just a few days ago, it was minus 25 degrees Celsius. And a wind chill of almost minus 37, something like that. And today we're getting a rapid rise in temperature as high as a couple degrees per hour at some point. And we're getting, it's going to go above zero. It's supposed to be about +3 or +4 by, in about 10 hours or so. Right now it's about -8. It hasn't quite been warming up as quickly as it was predicted. And then in a couple more days, we're going to go back down to the lows of -25. So what's happening is the jet stream is swinging past us. So basically, when it's super cold, the jet stream swings down well below your location, Ottawa in my case. So we get this cold Arctic air coming down, and then when the jet stream moves north above our location, then we get the temperatures that are, +3, +4 degrees Celsius, well above freezing with lots of melting. So probably, if you believe the forecast for later on today, in about 4 or 5 hours, it'll probably shift to rain. There'll be a bit of freezing rain, but the transition, because the temperature is rising so quickly, there shouldn't be that much freezing rain, although they are forecasting it for a couple hours. But I don't really believe that unless the temperature gets stuck about zero. But anyway, that's why the weather, there's all this weather wilding, weather whiplashing, huge variability. Now these effects, climate change is affecting everything. So I'm going to specifically talk about how it affects the ratio of male to female newborns. Okay? So, we know that animal species are migrating. There's huge changes in the biology. There's changes in ecosystems. There's changes in migration. There's changes in the phenology or the timing. When things, the timing of when, for example, food sources for animals are available, and life cycles of various different creatures are affected by these timing changes or phenology changes. So we know that we're getting massive changes, so we shouldn't be surprised that climate change is also really affecting the gender of the gender ratio of animals, and that includes humans. So let me talk about how it's affecting humans. Okay, so basically the bottom line is that when it's colder, there's fewer males born. As temperatures rise, there's more human males that are born. Okay, so the global ratio, the average sort of global ratio of males born is there's 103 to 106 males that are born globally for every 100 females that are born. Okay, males are more vulnerable. Young males male infants are much more vulnerable. They're not as biologically strong as females. So basically the objective is at reproductive age, you want a 50-50 balance males to females for perpetuation of the species. So because males are more fragile and more vulnerable, then the mortality rate of males is higher, so therefore that's why the ratio biologically, that's why the ratio, you have to have more males at birth. Now, conception is a different issue because there's something called the gestation period, which is the time between conception and birth. Now, surprisingly, about 50% of all, after conception, about 50%, greater than 50% of the development of the baby is somehow ended, terminated by the mother's body. Okay, that seems like a very high number to me, but that's the sort of statistic. So if climate or extreme stresses or other things cause more males not to make it through the gestation period, then that will lower the ratio. So as temperature rises, if it's just a straight temperature thing, there's more males when it's warmer. And in fact, for every degree Celsius, there's 0.06% more males, and this is from a study. There was a European study of Danes, Finns, Norwegians, and Swedes that were born between 1878 and 1914. Okay, and this study came up with that number. Cooler years have fewer males, and warmer years have more males. Okay, now there's another factor that's at play here, and that is stress that the mother carrying the child, the amount of stress that she has in her life has a big impact on whether it will be a successful pregnancy or not, and also on the gender, and this will affect the ratio. So if we assume that you know, there's an equal chance of conception of a male and female being produced at conception, then the ratio, so normally there's you know, because there's more males born, then normally the female, there's more likelihood that the female there'll be problems with the female, and the female will be rejected. Basically, the pregnancy will end, so there'll be more males that are born. One of the reasons for this is that the female fetus carries all her eggs. Okay, so there's more genetic material, there's more possibility that there can be complications, you know, chromosomal damage or other complications, meaning that the female fetus will not be carried to term. So we talked about temperature, higher temperature, more males, but there's also this stress effect. So there was a Japanese study that looked at the ratio of males born to females when there were earthquakes. So just after the earthquake, the you know, babies that were born 9 months later, for about a month or so, a month or a few months, the birth ratio was affected by these stressful events. And the stressful events meant there were fewer boys. So this was the Kobe earthquake in 1995 was examined, people in that region. The Japan, the earthquake and the tsunami in 2011, followed by Fukushima, was also affected, and the 2016 earthquakes. So in those cases, it was found that there was anywhere from 6 to 14% decline from the previous year in the number of males that were born. Okay, so stressful events. Now these were short-term effects. They just lasted a few months. Now with climate change, it's more of a chronic, insidious problem that it's not an episodic, one episode that then goes away. Although climate change causes all kinds of extreme weather events. It causes flooding, it causes droughts. So what it indicates is that these episodic events can cause, you know, a great change in the birth ratio. Okay, so also, you know, there's a lot of other factors that come into play. For example, and I've discussed this a long time ago in some previous videos. I hope the camera lens is still clear. The snow's coming down quite a bit here. Okay, but
excuse me.
I remember there was one study when babies that were born, for example, some European countries, when the Germans occupied them, the population was under great stress. Most countries occupied would be, as you can imagine. And as a result, there was a lack of food. And because of new studies from epigenetics, okay, we know that people that were born during those wartime years lacking food are overweight to a higher percentage than other people. And what this is based on is, you know, think of a person's genetic makeup, okay, as the words in a book and the chapters, and think of epigenetics as somebody writing in the margins of that book. So the epigenetic factors, basically people remembered kids that were subjected, when the mother had lack of food, her body would be stressed, and that information was carried by epigenetics to the baby. So the baby would tend to remember these periods of time with lack of food, and therefore would have this more of a craving for food as an adult, and would therefore be overweight. At least that's the theory, and I think that's generally believed in the community. There's a number of books, excellent books, that have been written recently on epigenetics. Okay, now according to the recent Japanese study and the European studies, then these stressful events would actually reduce the number of males that were born. So that ratio of 103 to 106 males born for every female born would actually be decreased. Okay, so these are all very interesting and crucial factors. So it's kind of a trade-off. So the net result is the birth ratios, male to female, are going to have they're going to be very localized differences depending on stressful events that happen from climate change. But overall, the general trend will be that there's more males born because it's warmer, there's less males born because of all of these extreme events. So the net effect, wherever you are, will depend on sort of the interplay between those two things. So as you go further and further north, right, the Arctic temperature amplification means that it's warmer and warmer up there. So that would indicate that as you go further north, the proportion of males born to females will actually increase. Okay, so obviously there's a lot more to be studied and learned about this, you know, as climate change abruptly takes off. A lot of younger people really get it, and there's actually a lot of younger females that say, you know, I don't want to have kids and bring them up in this world given where we're heading. You know, if people don't think there's a future, then they're much less likely to want to have kids, bring up kids. So this is, there's huge societal implications, and you know, there's a lot of things that we really need to think a lot more deeply about to determine how these factors will be affected by abrupt climate change. Thanks for listening.